my opinion. The level of progress with this new group that he put into place after we dissolved the actual group that was doing some accountability type stuff. You know, so
how do you feel about that? The mayor's decision to dissolve that.
I think Ted Wheeler is one of the most corrupt, evil politicians on the face of the planet. And
have you ever expressed that view in city council meetings or in any public forum?
Oh yeah, he's Ted Wheeler does not like me. And
how do you know he doesn't like you?
Oh, he's actually he's stated on city record I've gone repeatedly to City Hall for years, and one of the things that is the thing that I sign up for repeatedly is the war on cop watchers, citizen journalists, and activists. And I keep speaking about that because it's an ongoing issue, and the names and the faces just keep changing. If there's a new activist or a new person that starts filming at City Hall, it doesn't take long before they're targeted. So every time I sign up, there's basically a new series of incidents that I can talk about, which is directly targeting of me for my activities, or other people. Some of them are here filming in this courtroom today.
So what do you mean there's a series of incidents? Like something happens as a consequence of being a cop watcher?
Well, there's a man named Eli Ritchie. He started going to city council meetings and filming the police. He had sort of been doing that, I guess, on his own for a while, but not releasing anything publicly. And he had never really done much other than in his own neighborhood and mainly at the Gateway TriMet, and a lot of his interactions were with TriMet police and TriMet. And he started going to public meetings at City Hall, and he started doing stuff like asking the chief of police, Chief Daniel Outlaw, a series of questions. She got a stalking order on him.
So I want to talk about like what happened to you as a result of being a cop watcher.
Well, this isn't my first frame up through G4S security, and I was actually physically attacked by a G4S security guard, and it came out through our discovery that he was a former LAPD sheriff, and that he had I can't remember the exact numbers, but it was like an admission of using, these were the three things they asked him about. And they asked about him using his job position to personally access information that was non-job related, like people that he wanted to run a name check on or whatever. Using unlawful force. And another thing was lying on reports or lying under oath or to his superiors or something to that extent. He had, there was like, I think a number of 10, 30, and 50. So I think the numbers was he admitted to lying to superiors or perjuring himself 10 times, using
So I want to talk
records
about,
to access 30 times and maybe, and 50 times of unlawful force or excessive force. I can't remember.
let's talk about
But-
City Hall, okay? So on January 9th, 2019, up to that point in time, how many times would you estimate you've been to City Hall for a council meeting?
I would say probably a minimum of 100, possibly 200 meetings or more. I don't know.
Is it important for you to go to these meetings?
Yes.
Why?
So I can bring up these various things as they arise, or to speak on city agenda items, or, you know, stuff like the Chief Arrest $10 million contract for 5 years that they just signed in May with the city, I think it was. So there's always a series of things, from us having levels of lead in our water that are similar to Flint, Michigan, and the cover-ups of that. There's always something almost weekly that I would have something to say, whether even if I don't go to city meetings, I still do look at the agenda and have my opinions on stuff. Sometimes I don't actually go to meetings. Through this recent arrest in January, they basically said that I caused harm to my victim or whatever, and so they used a no contact order for the last several months on me, so I can't go to City Hall to speak about any of this stuff. And they used my rubbing blood on the wall after I was physically attacked, and the chief arrest guy dug his claws in and punctured my hand in about 7 places. They said that that I basically was to have no contact with my victim, and my victim is the building itself, or this supposed wall of art, which to me is actually just a beige wall with pieces of art on it. It's not the totality of it is not an art wall. They can argue for that or against it, but to me it's just a beige, bland, mundane wall with some art trinkets on there, and my intention was never to damage anything. I was physically attacked. I have PTSD, and I was triggered, and that's why I rubbed blood on the wall. It was not an intent to damage or anything. If I wanted to damage something, believe me, I could damage something. It's not hard to, if it was my intent to damage anything at City Hall, then my only intent actually was to go there as an artist and a videographer and perform my artistic expression and my creative passion and the stuff I'm passionate about, which is videography and filming. And so I think that it's kind of erroneous that these guys are acting like I'm just like some guy who goes in and I'm there to damage artwork and stuff, when the reality is I am the artist that was damaged by them physically, to the point where I had injuries that are still there. I have the scars from the guy's fingers. I'm gonna have these scars on my hand probably for the next 5 to 10 years or so before they fade and I can't see them anymore. Or maybe some will be permanent, who knows. But I did not intend to damage anything. All I did was go there to film And there was no city code about having a light on my camera. That is not anything that's ever been in code. It's not written. I asked them to produce this thing in writing several times. I actually complied with them, and not because I had to, but they asked me to cover my light. I told them, well, get me a piece of tape and I'll cover it, right? And I did cover it. And I had my camera light covered up. Whether it's gonna affect my video quality a little, I actually made a compromise and I put duct tape on my camera. And actually, you know, I have my camera right here right now, and there's the duct tape still on there. But, you know, so I actually did comply, and they still physically attacked me, and it was all based on the stuff that I'm exposing. The week previous to that, January 2nd, I had signed up 2 months in advance to go speak at City Hall. You could even, I mean, it might be relevant to play the City Hall video from January 2nd that shows that I signed up months in advance to go speak, and before I can even gather my stuff, I have 2 guys swarming on me, getting in my face. These are 2 people that know I have PTSD, that actually stated in court records that they know I have PTSD.
How do you know that these other people, or why do you believe that they know that you have PTSD?
Because I state it all the time, because I want to point out that they're consistently violating ADA policies. This is, and I'm not the only one they're violating ADA policy and constitutional law. This is, the only thing that sparked this case was the catalyst of me having a camera, which was never in code. There's no city code to not have that on my camera. They did start instructing before city council meetings. I think it was 2 months after my arrest, they finally started instructing people that no bright lights. But as you saw, and as you asked the one Chief Arrest lady that recently testified, that she said, well, typically lights aren't allowed. So what that means is typically they aren't allowed, or it's used as an excuse, just like any other thing is used as an excuse for people that aren't mainstream media. Well, when the Bill of Rights and the Constitution was written, the press was anyone who had anything from a piece of paper that would just scroll it out. They didn't have Xeroxes, they didn't have copiers, they barely even had printing presses back then. So a lot of the stuff that was actually being circulated when these constitutional documents were written, and everyone was the press that wanted to be the press, and that's still the rule as far as I see. There's no difference between my right to film or the constitutional rights of a reporter.
Do you consider yourself a reporter?
Yes, I've actually
Or a member of the press?
Yes, I've actually edited and published 3 separate newspapers myself. One was Ship of Fools, one was called the Mile High Hemp Report, and another one was a music related thing for my record label, which was a punk and metal label called Riotous Assembly, which I used also as a mail order catalog. And I'm in constant contact with the media, like I said, helping Nick Budnick break a case about Multnomah County DAs refusing to prosecute a Lincoln County sergeant that raped a woman. And so I do a lot of stuff, and a lot of my stuff actually does make it into all kinds of various,
Can I ask you
I
about
was
your-
publishing these newspapers back in the early 90s. I think my first newspaper I actually self-published myself was in like 1992. I produced 3,000 to 5,000 copies.
Okay. Can I ask you about something else?
Yes.
Can we talk about your camera?
Yes.
Okay. Were you asked, or when did you ask for a piece of tape, a piece of duct tape, and when did you put that on your camera?
Well, it was brought up probably, I would say, maybe